Welcome and hello. I am Joshua Abrams with Grounded Solutions Network, along with the Family Housing Fund and the Urban Land Institute of Minnesota. We're excited to share this training video with you. Thanks to our funders, the Metropolitan Council and McKnight Foundation. We're developing a wide range of resources for cities interested in mixed income housing. Feel free to visit us at housingcounts.org. I'll go over there. That's housingcounts.org, where you can browse our resources. There's two objectives of today's video, which is about the Mixed Income Housing Calculator. The first is just to provide an overview of that tool. The other one is to help you think about the trade-offs involving crafting a policy that ties public subsidies to mixed income housing requirements. It's pretty common in the region for cities to have a policy that, for example, requires if the city provides a developer tax increment financing, or TIF, the developer has to build some affordable housing. But how do you go about crafting such a policy? How do you balance those incentives and the requirements? Those are the questions we're going to explore today. A good place to start is the Mixed Income Housing Calculator, and you see that in front of you. This is the welcome screen. I'm going to scroll down to this where we ask everyone to register. I'm going to put my name in here and organization. We don't ask people to do any username or password or anything like that. We just are curious who is using it. And I'm going to click submit. It takes a second to initialize. Okay, I'll start with this screen. What you see up top is some summary information. I'll scroll down just a little bit so we're centered. Some summary information about the number of units and whether or not it's profitable at this point, the cost for the developers. I want everyone to look over here on the right. We have a number of different sample community types. It's based on the Metropolitan Council's different categories like suburban edge or suburban. And I'm going to go down to urban, and I'm going to do high density wood frame rental. So we spent over a year gathering data for this. All the information we have is specific to the Minneapolis-St. Paul region, and you can think of the calculator as a pro forma that's designed specifically for addressing affordable housing questions. So I'm going to click this overview button right here and give you a second to look around. So what you see is some of the most common assumptions you would want to adjust for your community. Again, this is a high-density urban wood frame rental. So I would have chosen this if I was a planner in a community that Met Council considers urban, and it gets fairly high-density development. You can see 90 units per acre. You can see the cost for this project is about $34 million, but it actually right now it sells for a loss. So it's not feasible. We use a measure for feasibility called yield on cost, and for this project, it varies throughout the region, but for this one, it's 6.25%. And you see this project is just a little under 5%, so it doesn't quite pencil. You can also adjust land cost, parking ratios, or affordable housing requirements. Pretty much anything you want to adjust, you can, either here or further in the calculator. I'm going to assume that my community has rents that are a little bit higher than the average, so I'm going to up the average rent to $15.75. That's just a couple percentage points difference, but you actually see that it makes it now. Well, it's still not quite feasible. It did increase the feasibility, but it didn't quite turn it to make it feasible. At this point, some cities might look to provide TIF or other incentives. I'm going to go over here to adjust. there's a lot of numbers. You can adjust whatever you want about the building assumptions. Some of this is duplicated on the front screen. Some of it is new. The site area or the land cost. I'm going to go over here. You can also do financing assumptions. I'm going to go over here to incentives. I'm going to assume we're providing $400 per unit of TIF and that the TIF will last 25 years. You can either use those little arrows to adjust it or just type the numbers. You see what happened up here. It told us the value of that incentive we're providing is a little over $900,000. And over here you can see that the yield on the cost is now over 6.25%, so it's now actually feasible. I'm going to go back to the overview screen for a second by clicking overview. Okay, so what the second half that we wanted to talk about is what happens if you add in affordable housing requirements. I'm going to assume that 10% of the units will be affordable to someone making 80% of the area median income. It's a little bit of a mouthful, so I'm going to start with 10% of the units. Use this dial here. Can be a little bit, there we go, a little squirrely, but there we go. So 10% of the units, 180 units was in our development, so 10% means 18 of them are affordable. And the area median income means how affordable, what are the rents of the affordable units. It's already at 80%, but if it weren't, you could click 80%. And the affordability for 80% is, for a 3-bedroom apartment, it might be someone making around $60,000. We'll come back to the specific rents in a second. Okay, so what you see is it's still actually feasible. The cost for the developer of those 10% of the units is just over $360,000. The yield on cost is 6.3%. And we have this check again, which means it's feasible. So this might seem great, right? We have we're providing some incentive, but we're getting 10% of the units as affordable. But let's look at it in a little more detail. I'm going to go over to this Explore menu, click on that. And I'm going to go over to Revenue, this middle button. What you see here, and cover your eyes if you're afraid of math, but bear with me otherwise. You see what the market rate rents are here. They are, and then what you see is in the fourth line, what the rents for someone making 80% of area median income. And you can see that the market rate rents are affordable or pretty close to affordable for studios and 1-bedrooms, and they are below market rate for the 80% of area median income is a savings for 2-bedrooms. So these ones would rent for $1,500 as opposed to $2,000. But the studio and 1-bedroom, if you look at the top line versus the fourth line, there's really not much savings. So it makes you wonder if there's really much point in a policy that would require units to be affordable to someone making 10% of the, or 60% of the area median income, sorry, 80% of the area median income. But if you go down to the 60% of the area median income, you actually see there is a savings ranging from a couple $100 to almost $1,000, depending on the unit size. I'm going to go back to the overview screen, and rather than 80% of area median income, I'm going to drop down to 60. What you see happens here is that the cost of the requirement for the developer, rather than being about $300,000, now is about a little over $1.1 million. So it's significantly more, and that's because the rents are significantly cheaper when you go to the 60% of AMI. You can also see that it's not quite feasible. It's a little under feasibility. Feasibility, of course, is not a black and white cutoff line, but there might be some developments that start to have trouble, developers that have trouble working out the development or moving forward if it looked like this in their community for their development. So the goal would be to find that right mix of incentives and requirements that lets developments continue to work. Okay, that wraps up the presentation. I'm going to leave you with a few thoughts, and the first is how you could use this information. One thing you could do is, if you're preparing a report, you could actually just use it to gather data and then talk about those numbers, do in your presentation, turn them into some slides or whatever you want. Or you could also show off the calculator and do that at a public meeting or in front of council to actually illustrate it. So that's the first. The second is to remember that the results are only as good as the data. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. We have some regional real estate data that you can click on and download. But generally, you should make sure that all the assumptions in here, all of these, and also in the adjust menu, work for the type of development you see in your community. With that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation. Thank you for listening. We have free personal help sessions for calculator users, no cost. You can click schedule an appointment up here, and 3 times a week you can schedule it right through that link. We can answer your questions about how to use it. We welcome your feedback. You're welcome to email me at abrams@planningcollaborative.com. Again, that's abrams@planningcollaborative.com. Well, we hope the calculator is useful to you, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for listening.